The Cast Cases and Mysteries. The Case of the Queen's Chess Set, Part 2. It took about 5 minutes before Aubrey calmed down and began to think clearly again. I must not tell anyone else about this, she thought. If no one knows, I can deal with it my way. But I must make sure that Katie does not talk. Aubrey begged her sister to keep her mouth shut. Then she slipped upstairs to her new room. She sat on her bed after she pulled the shades down and closed the blinds. Aubrey laid the note and map out on her bed and pulled out her new magnifying glass. Her parents always joked that she was a regular Sherlock Holmes. Maybe they were right. With its help, she managed to see the date in the corner, which she had not noticed before. The map and the note had been drawn in 1973. Aubrey glanced back at the map and saw a place in St. George's Cemetery marked with an X. Aubrey immediately folded the map up and put it in her zipper pocket for safekeeping. Running downstairs, she told Katie where she would be and darted out of the house before Katie could say no. She mounted her bike and pedaled into the town hall to peruse old maps. When she arrived, the clerk was very uncertain about letting a 16-year-old girl look at the 1973 records. Aubrey decided to indulge his curiosity, and when the clerk wanted to take the map, Aubrey refused to give it up. The clerk became indignant, and they started to argue. He said it might be valuable and it should be turned over to the museum, while Aubrey said if it was, he would most definitely want the credit of discovering it. Finally, Aubrey snapped at him. She was red in the face with anger and impatient with standing. She said, "If you don't give me what I want, I will tell my 2 enormous and temperamental brothers that you refuse me. They'll probably want to talk to you. If they do, you might find yourself bickering with St. Peter." The clerk froze and began to giggle nervously, but Aubrey kept a serious expression on her face. The young man's smile vanished, and he immediately pulled out a stack of papers and placed them in front of her. "A very wise choice to make, sir." Aubrey gave him her wicked smile. Then she grabbed the papers and walked away. She picked a table where she could see everyone who entered, but no one could see her. Once she was settled, she laid the old map down and placed a new map beside it. The 2 maps were almost identical. She did notice that a hill had been dug out to make way for a railroad in the 1860s, and that the cemetery had been renamed. Ever since 1940, it had been called the Veterans Cemetery. Aubrey then placed the map from the chess table on top and marked the spot where the X was. "Thank you so very much," she said to the clerk when she dropped the file off at his desk. He nodded slightly, but he could not say anything, for at that moment he was being scolded for slacking. Aubrey left, but if she had looked behind her, she would have seen the young clerk making a telephone call. Aubrey snuck back to her house and snitched a shovel from the garage without letting Katie know she was back. After this, she pedaled to the cemetery, trying to look as normal as possible. When she arrived, Aubrey glanced around to see if anyone had followed her, but she saw no one. Positive that she was alone, Aubrey began to search for the spot marked X. She found it by a gnarled, old, and twisted tree. Aubrey shivered when she looked at it, for it looked evil. Before she started digging, she looked around again. Seeing only birds, Aubrey began to dig. Dirt went flying in all directions as she dug. She had been hacking at it for a good 5 minutes when she hit something. Aubrey stared through some strands of roots and saw a box. She attacked the roots and removed them one by one, getting a splinter in the process. When she finally reached the box, she struggled and eventually pulled it out. She huffed and puffed while she stared at it. Tied to the top of the chest was a package. Aubrey opened it and retrieved another note. She sighed, mumbled to herself, and started to read. "Key to box at Hall of Records. Replacement with Queen." Written below this interesting and valuable information was "Long may Louis and may in it rinse." Apparently, the lower part of this paper was accidentally soaked in water, which blotted out some of the letters. But her thoughts were cut short. Someone had just grabbed her from behind. A hand was clamped over her mouth while another hand snatched the note. "Thank you so very much for finding it for me." Aubrey was frozen for 5 seconds, but before she could react, she was hit on the head and lost consciousness.